A 13-year-old becomes the first person to ever beat Tetris. We get some hints at the Switch too, and Twitch changes its nudity rules yet again. I'm Ash Dixon, and this is GINX News. Tetris has been kicking since the 80s, we all know of it, we've all given it a go, and you may have assumed that the game had been beaten long ago, but it wasn't until the very end of 2023 that it was finally defeated, and it was achieved by none other than a 13-year-old from Oklahoma. Now, beating Tetris isn't simply about playing until you get to a screen that says the end, because, well, there isn't one. It's a little more complicated than that. But boy, is the journey of how we got here as magical as it is fascinating. Now, to understand how you actually beat Tetris, I've got to take you back to its origins on the NES. And we all know how it plays. Blocks fall down the screen, you attempt to assemble them in complete lines, and doing so clears that row. As you progress, the game speeds up, and you just gotta keep going until you run out of space. For a long time, however, it was thought that it was impossible to get past level 29. That's because at that stage, the game is moving so fast that even by holding down the D-pad, it's not fast enough to move the blocks to the edge of the screen. That was until 2011, when this guy, Thor Ackerland, managed to beat the level by using a technique called hyper-tapping, which is essentially just mashing the button as quickly as possible. Now, this essentially opened the floodgates, because it turns out the game doesn't get any faster after level 29, and that meant as long as your brain was fast enough to work out where the block should go and your fingers were quick enough to get them there, well, the limit was potentially endless. And over the next decade, the record slowly climbed through the level 30s, until 2021, when yet again a new technique would change things forever. You see, Tetris player Cheese took inspiration from two other button mashing strategies. One was this multi-finger technique by Hector Fly, congratulations to his wife, and a second technique that involves using one finger to press down on a button, while another alternating finger pushes the controller up towards the finger, essentially doubling your button presses. Combining these two techniques, Cheese created his own, which he named rolling. And if the floodgates were opened before, well, rolling destroyed them entirely. Before you knew it, people were reaching over level 100, and it seemed like the record could keep climbing forever. But there was a whole new obstacle. That's because at level 138, the color of those falling blocks just start glitching out, and man, can some of the color palettes get wacky, such as this level known as Dusk, which is incredibly hard to navigate, followed by the even worse Charcoal, where a load of the blocks are black and basically impossible to see. And look, that's all good, there's hard levels to beat, but how do you actually beat the game? Well, Tetris is an old title, and as much as it wants to keep going level after level, it reaches a point where certain things cause a crash. Upon this discovery, a player called Hydrant Dude mapped out all of the possible crashes, their statistical likelihood, and how to trigger them. You can check out his YouTube channel for the full technical breakdown of how all that stuff works. But through his efforts, there was a revelation. Level 155 marked the first opportunity for a player to cause a crash. This presented the first time in Tetris history where you could defeat the game instead of the game defeating you. And so the goalposts were set. The current Tetris world champion, Fractal, had his eyes on the prize and started streaming his attempts daily. Many put their money on him to break the record. But he wasn't the only one in the race, and on day 3, he was notified that the underdog, Blue Scooty, a 13-year-old rising star, was on a heroic run. He sped through the difficult colors with ease, and the finish line was in his sights. But as he entered level 155, a misplay spelled disaster, causing him to miss the trigger, which would crash the game. But his run wasn't over, he was still playing, and his only hope now was to just keep on going. And 2 levels later, on a move that had a 73% chance of triggering, this happened.
Oh my god! Oh. I can't feel my fingers. I can't feel my hands.
And the moment was just beautiful. Here you had this dedicated, talented kid exceeding all expectations and making history. And as if the moment couldn't get any more meaningful, Scooty dedicated his win to his dad, who tragically passed away just weeks before. Even if you've never touched Tetris before, it's hard not to feel a sense of awe here, especially when you see the sweater that Scooty's grandparents made for him. And so Scooty became the first person to beat Tetris. The Switch 2 will reportedly not be the radical upgrade many have been hoping for. That's according to one industry analyst who has claimed to have discussed it with developers who have had their hands on the console's dev kits. Whilst the Nintendo Switch has some incredibly beautiful games in its library, it's also fair to say that many others leave a lot to be desired. Looking at you, Scarlet Violet. And with Nintendo's frustrating policy of hoarding their IPs to themselves, meaning we can't see Bayonetta 3 in the way we probably should, fans have been left clamoring for a significant upgrade to the hardware as soon as possible. And no, the OLED does not count. Well, according to Dr. Serkan Toto, the CEO of game industry consultancy firm Kantan Games, don't expect any wild changes with its successor. Speaking to gamesindustry.biz, he said, "The time is finally here for a Switch successor. Even though I can say a Pro model did exist and certain developers were already working with the dev kit, the next system is likely to be an iteration rather than a revolution. Nintendo might add some bells and whistles to the device, but it will be similar to the current Switch." He also predicted that this new console would cost around $400, with the price of games increasing to what's now become the industry standard of $70. If what Toto is saying is true, it would be a little bit disappointing. The current Switch is lagging far behind in terms of technology compared to the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S. Sure, it's having to carry its tech inside something the size of a large smartphone, but we've seen with the Steam Deck and the Asus ROG Ally that portable tech has advanced greatly since the Switch's original release. So let's hope the internal upgrades are more significant than what's being suggested. I mean, come on, imagine Tears of the Kingdom in 4K with ray tracing. I know it will never happen, but man, a kid can dream. The Twitch nudity rules have changed yet again. We've had the bathtub streams, we've had the topless meta, but man, Twitch clearly can't get things under control. The website had a load of guideline changes last month to try and address those problems, but if you can rely on Twitch streamers and sex workers for one thing, is that they will find a loophole and they will exploit it. Well, under those December rules, it turns out it was a-okay to imply nudity, meaning you could put on an incredibly tiny set of underwear, pop some black boxes on top, and stream like this. And while those streams were correctly labeled as sexual themes, it didn't matter whether you actually clicked on it or not, because all of the contents would be on full display right there in the thumbnail. It wasn't ideal, though it's hardly surprising considering how ambiguous Twitch's guidelines often are. They've now banned such implied nudity, although there's still plenty of questions around their decision making. You see, as long as you're clothed, cleavage is unrestricted, though underboob is not allowed. Now, I'll admit I may have a small personal bias on this one, but that doesn't really seem fair to me. And that's basically where we're at now. What do you think though? Have Twitch finally nailed their nudity rules? How would you change them yourself? Let us know in the comments down below. And that's the show. Thank you for tuning in. As always, my one request is that you hit that subscribe button, if you haven't already, of course. Check out yesterday's wild Mickey Mouse video somewhere around here, and we'll see you tomorrow.